There is something your body does after every meal that most people never notice until a lab result, a warning from my attending physician, Dr. John, or a family history makes it impossible to ignore. You eat. Your food is broken down. Part of it becomes glucose in the bloodstream. And then, minute by minute, your body has to decide how smoothly it can handle that arrival. When that system is working well, you do not think about it. You simply move through your day. Your energy stays more even. Your appetite behaves itself. Your mind feels clearer. You are hungry at the right times, not all the time. But when that system starts getting pushed too hard, it can feel as if your whole day changes shape. You get hungry fast after eating. You crash in the afternoon. Sweet things call your name more loudly than they used to. A normal lunch leaves you sleepy. You find yourself reaching for snacks, not because you are truly hungry, but because your body feels unsettled. And for many people, the first sign is not how they feel. It is what they hear. A routine checkup, a number that is higher than expected, a sentence that makes the room go quieter than it was a moment before. Maybe it is, watch your blood sugar. Maybe it is, prediabetes. Maybe it is, you need to be careful now. Whatever the wording, it lands heavy. So before I say another word, let me give you something hopeful and honest at the same time. A great deal of what happens to blood sugar through the day is shaped by ordinary, repeated food choices. Not by one perfect breakfast, not by one heroic salad, not by one guilty dessert, by patterns. And if you understand one simple principle, most of the rest begins to make sense. Your body handles a steady arrival better than a sudden rush. That is the idea to keep in front of you. A meal that sends glucose into the bloodstream very quickly asks a lot from the body all at once. A meal that brings it in more gradually is usually easier to manage. That difference matters far more than many people realize. Now I need to be careful here, because people deserve honesty more than excitement when the topic is this serious. I am not telling you that food alone cures diabetes. I am not telling you that you can eat your way out of every blood sugar problem. I am not telling you to stop medication, reduce medication, or outsmart a treatment plan on your own. If you have diabetes, prediabetes, symptoms that concern you, or medication that affects glucose, that is medical territory. That is where my attending physician, Dr. John, belongs. And if you are making significant changes to how you eat while taking medication, those changes should happen with my attending physician, Dr. John, fully aware of what you are doing. That is not me being dramatic. That is me being responsible. Because better food choices can help. And when they help, numbers can shift. And if numbers shift while medication stays the same, sometimes the result is not harmless. So keep that part clear from the beginning. What I am offering here is not a cure story. It is a food pattern story. It is about the ordinary foods that tend to support steadier blood sugar, the habits that make meals easier on the body, and the simple reasons those foods work as well as they do. And the reason many people need this conversation now is that modern eating has become very good at doing the opposite. Food today is often soft, stripped down, sweetened, convenient, drinkable, portable, and fast. Fast to buy, fast to chew, fast to digest, fast to hit the bloodstream, fast to leave you wanting more. That is the trap. People think the problem begins with willpower. Very often it begins with speed. If you only remember one sentence from everything I say, remember this one. The body usually struggles more with a glucose ambush than with a gradual release. Once you see that, the best everyday foods stop looking random. They start looking like a team. They all do one or more of a few useful things. They slow digestion, they bring fiber, they add protein, they add healthy fat, they reduce how quickly a meal hits the bloodstream, they help you stay fuller longer. They make it easier not to ride the spike and crash roller coaster all day. So let us start with the foundation. The first category is not glamorous. It does not come in slick packaging. It is not marketed like a miracle. But it is one of the strongest friends your blood sugar can have. Beans, lentils, and other legumes. These foods matter because they solve several problems at once. They contain carbohydrate, yes, but they do not behave like sugar in a soft drink or a pastry. They come packaged with fiber. They bring plant protein. They take longer to digest. They tend to keep a person satisfied longer than fast, refined starches do, and that changes the whole pace of a meal. A bowl of lentil soup does not land in the body the way a frosted breakfast pastry does. A serving of black beans does not behave like white bread. Chickpeas do not hit the bloodstream like sweetened cereal. The difference is not only the amount, it is the form. That matters more than people think. A food can contain carbohydrate and still be far gentler than another food with carbohydrate. That is where a lot of confusion comes from. People hear carbs raise blood sugar, which is true in a broad sense, and then they assume all carbohydrate foods act the same. They do not. Some come wrapped in fiber, structure, and nourishment. Others arrive stripped, softened, and ready to flood in. That is why beans and lentils are so valuable. They are not empty. They are substantial. They ask the body to work through them at a steadier pace. And they are practical. They are affordable. They can live in soups, stews, salads, grain bowls, wraps, side dishes, and simple weeknight meals. If a person replaced just a few highly refined starch-heavy meals each week with meals built around legumes, it would often be a better move than chasing some expensive supplement with a dramatic label. The second category is whole, high-fiber carbohydrate foods that still have structure left in them. Think of foods like steel-cut oats, barley, intact grains, and many vegetables that bring bulk and fiber instead of just quick starch. Not every grain deserves the same reputation. A bowl of slow-cooked oats is not the same event as a bowl of sugar-coated flakes. A hearty, fiber-rich grain dish is not the same event as a pile of white rice with little else around it. Again, the important thing is not purity theater. It is pace. How quickly does this meal enter the bloodstream? How much fiber is working in your favor? How much chewing does it require? How much nourishment comes with it? How long will it stay with you? Those are better questions than, is this food trendy? Or, did someone on the internet call this a superfood? And while we are here, let me say something that helps people immediately. One of the easiest ways to make a meal gentler on blood sugar is not always to remove the carbohydrate. Often it is to stop serving that carbohydrate alone. Carbs by themselves can move very quickly. Carbs paired with fiber, protein, or fat usually move more slowly. That is why a piece of toast on its own can feel different from a meal that includes eggs, vegetables, or nut butter. It is why fruit juice behaves differently from whole fruit. It is why a plain, starch-heavy snack can leave you hunting for more food sooner than you expected. Now let us move to breakfast, because breakfast is where many people quietly sabotage the entire rest of the day. A surprising number of morning foods are really desserts wearing respectable clothes. Sweet cereal, flavored coffee drinks, pastries, muffins that are cake by another name, toast and jam with almost nothing to slow it down, yogurts that look healthy until you read how much sugar they carry, granola that sounds wholesome and lands like candy. Then people wonder why they feel shaky, hungry, distracted, or desperate for another pick-me-up before lunch. If you want one of the most effective everyday shifts for steadier blood sugar, start the day with a breakfast that contains real protein and, ideally, some fiber. Eggs are a classic example. Plain eggs are simple, accessible, filling, and low in carbohydrate. They do not ask the body to process a flood of glucose first thing in the morning. Pair them with vegetables or with a small portion of a more substantial carbohydrate, and you have built a breakfast that is far steadier than most boxed breakfast foods ever will be. Greek yogurt without a lot of added sugar. They do not ask the body to process a flood of glucose first thing in the morning. Pair them with vegetables or with a small portion of a more substantial carbohydrate, and you have built a breakfast that is far steadier than most boxed breakfast foods ever will be. Greek yogurt without a lot of added sugar can also do the job. Cottage cheese can do it. Tofu can do it. Leftovers from dinner can do it. People forget that breakfast does not have to look like breakfast marketing. It only has to help you. That is an important distinction. The best breakfast is not the one that looks traditional in an advertisement. It is the one that keeps you from starting the day on a glucose roller coaster. Now let us talk about foods that slow meals down from another angle: nuts, seeds, and healthy fats. A small handful of nuts can do more for stability than a much larger sugary snack. Why? Because nuts bring fat, some protein, texture, and staying power. They are not a magic food. They are simply slower, more substantial, and less likely to whip appetite into chaos. Walnuts, almonds, pistachios, peanuts, and similar foods are useful not because they are glamorous, but because they help interrupt the modern habit of feeding every energy dip with something sweet and easy. Seeds matter too. Chia seeds and ground flax can add fiber and substance to yogurt, oatmeal, or smoothies. Used sensibly, they can help change the speed of a meal. Not dramatically in one cinematic moment, but quietly, repeatedly, which is how much of health works. Avocado fits here as well. It is not a miracle, and it is not required, but when added to a meal, it can make that meal more balanced and satisfying. And satisfaction matters. People do not make good food decisions when they are always half-fed. That brings me to something people underestimate. Fullness is not the enemy. A person who builds meals that are too light, too stripped down, too low in protein, or too low in fiber often ends up paying for it later with cravings. Then they think they failed. Very often, the meal failed them first. A balanced plate is not punishment. It is support. And that support is one reason non-starchy vegetables deserve more respect than they usually get. Vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, green beans, peppers, zucchini, leafy greens, cucumbers, mushrooms, cabbage, and similar foods do not usually get marketed with dramatic promises, but they do some of the most useful work in the entire meal. They add volume, they add fiber, they stretch the plate, they help a person feel like they ate, and when they take up a serious amount of space in a meal, there is naturally less room left for foods that hit fast and vanish fast. That is one reason good meal structure matters. Half a plate of vegetables, a clear source of protein, and a thoughtful carbohydrate portion is not flashy advice, but it is sturdy advice. It gives the body a better experience than a beige pile of refined starch with a sweet drink on the side. Ever will CDC Ada. Now let us talk about fish, because fish helps in a different way. Fatty fish like salmon, sardines, trout, mackerel, and herring are not really blood sugar foods in the same direct sense that fiber-rich carbohydrates are. They help more by improving the overall quality of the diet and replacing less helpful choices. They bring protein, they bring satisfying fat, and when they take the place of highly processed meals, fast food, or low-quality snack-based eating, the whole pattern improves. They also have an important side benefit in the bigger metabolic picture. People dealing with blood sugar issues are often dealing with more than blood sugar alone. Weight concerns, blood pressure, blood lipids, inflammation, low activity, poor sleep, and stress tend to travel together, so foods that improve the overall terrain matter. A good meal is not only about one number, and that is something I wish more people heard. The body is a system. It does not divide itself into neat social media categories. The same food pattern that supports steadier blood sugar often supports better satiety, better heart health, better energy, and fewer swings in mood and appetite. That is not because food is magic. It is because the body is connected. Now, there are also a few smaller helpers that people ask about constantly, and I want to handle them with care because this is where hype enters the room. The first is vinegar. Vinegar is one of those simple things people either dismiss entirely or oversell badly. The truth sits in the middle, where it usually does. Taken diluted before or with a meal, vinegar may help reduce the post-meal glucose rise for some people. That is a real enough effect to take seriously, but not a dramatic enough effect to worship. Think of it as a possible assistant, not a solution. And if you use it, it should be diluted well, taken with common sense, and never treated like a replacement for real food changes or medical guidance, PubMed. And because I want to stay responsible, let me say again, if you are taking medication that affects blood sugar, this is one more reason to involve my attending physician, Dr. John, rather than experimenting casually. The second small helper people always bring up is cinnamon. Here again, calm thinking helps. Cinnamon is not useless. Cinnamon is not a miracle. It may offer modest benefit for some people, but it is not the backbone of good blood sugar control. If you enjoy it in oats, yogurt, or coffee, fine. Use it as a supporting detail, not a headline act. The danger is not the spice. The danger is turning a small supporting habit into an excuse not to fix the main pattern. And the main pattern is where the real leverage is. Because the foods that do the most damage are rarely hidden. Sugary drinks, sweet coffee drinks, dessert-like breakfasts, refined snack foods, candy in the afternoon when lunch was too weak, white flour foods eaten alone, constant grazing on easy carbohydrates. The liquid sugar people drink without even counting it. Those are the places where the body gets ambushed again and again. A person can eat a respectable dinner and still struggle if the rest of the day is built on sweet beverages, snack bars, breakfast pastries, and reward foods that arrive every time energy dips. This is why I do not like the phrase cheat meal very much. It makes food sound moral when the real issue is often mechanical. What matters first is not whether a food is sinful. What matters first is what kind of experience it creates inside the body, and how often. That brings us to the most overlooked tool of all, consistency. People want one food to save them, but blood sugar is usually shaped less by one heroic ingredient and more by meal rhythm, composition, and repetition. Eating meals that include protein instead of only quick carbs, making room for fiber most days, drinking fewer calories, building lunches that do not leave you starving at 3 in the afternoon, not waiting until you are frantic to choose what you eat. Those things are plain, they are not sexy, they are also powerful. And there is a reason they do not get sold with the same force as flashy products. Simple patterns are hard to package. Nobody can charge much for telling you to build a better breakfast, eat more beans, stop drinking your sugar, add more vegetables, and think about the speed of a meal. But that advice often helps more than a shelf full of wellness products that make dramatic promises with very little substance behind them. That does not mean prescription medicine is unimportant. Sometimes it is absolutely necessary. Let that be clear. If my attending physician, Dr. John, tells you medication belongs in your plan, that is not failure, that is care. But it does mean this. There is a strange quiet around the cheapest useful habits. The habits that do not impress anyone online. The habits that do not come with subscription boxes. The habits that do not look like breakthroughs because they have been sitting in kitchens all along. A pot of lentils. Eggs in the morning, plain yogurt instead of dessert disguised as breakfast, water instead of sweet drinks, vegetables taking up real room on the plate, nuts instead of the vending machine, beans where refined starch used to dominate, fish a couple times a week, a little planning before hunger becomes chaos. That is not a glamorous story. It is a reliable one. And reliable is what people need when a health concern starts to feel frightening. So let me bring it all together in one clear path. If your concern is healthier day-to-day blood sugar, become part of the foundation, not decoration. Choose breakfasts that do not begin the day with a sugar rush. Use nuts, seeds, yogurt, eggs, and similar foods to make meals and snacks more substantial. Cut down the sweet drinks that do more damage than many people realize. If vinegar suits you, and my attending physician, Dr. John, is aware, use it modestly as a helper, not a hero. If you enjoy cinnamon, fine, but do not build your hopes around spices while ignoring the rest of the plate. Most of all, stop looking for one miracle food and start building a food environment that your body does not have to fight every hour. That is where progress usually begins. Not in perfection, in pattern. Not in fear, in understanding. Not in punishment, in steadiness. And if you have been feeling ashamed, worried, or overwhelmed by this topic, let me say one more thing clearly. Confusion around food is not a personal defect. Modern eating is confusing on purpose. There is a lot of money in making food irresistible, portable, hyper-palatable, and easy to overconsume. There is a lot of money in making sweet things feel normal. There is a lot of money in convincing people that the next product will fix what the last 20 products did not. There is much less money in telling people to return to ordinary meals with more structure and less noise. But less money does not mean less truth. In fact, very often it is the opposite. So the next time you sit down to eat and start thinking about blood sugar, do not begin with panic. Do not begin with guilt. Begin with a better question. Is this meal going to arrive like a rush or more like a steady release? That one question can change a great deal. It can change what you choose for breakfast. It can change what you keep in the house. It can change what you grab when you are tired. It can change whether lunch carries you through the afternoon or drops you into cravings an hour later. And over time, those ordinary moments matter more than people think. If this subject has become part of your life, or someone close to you has had that worrying conversation about blood sugar, then do not underestimate the power of simple food done consistently. Bring the serious part to my attending physician, Dr. John. Let the medical side stay medical. But do not give away the power of your daily choices just because they look ordinary. Ordinary choices, repeated often enough, shape extraordinary outcomes. That is true in the wrong direction, and it is true in the right one. So choose the right direction as often as you can. Choose foods that come with fiber instead of foods that have had it stripped away. Choose breakfasts that anchor you instead of breakfasts that excite your tongue and abandon you an hour later. Choose meals that satisfy enough to calm the next craving before it begins. Choose drinks that do not quietly turn into sugar you forgot to count. Choose patterns that support your body instead of keeping it in a constant state of catch-up. That is not punishment. That is care. And care, when practiced long enough, starts to look a lot like wisdom. If you want, tell me this in the comments. Did your family grow up with meals that naturally kept people steady, or did sugar and convenience become normal early on? What foods actually keep you full and even through the day? And which meals leave you crashing later, whether you like them or not? Those are the details people learn from each other. And if enough people start paying attention to those details, then maybe this subject gets a little less frightening, a little less confusing, and a lot more practical. In the next one, I would go even deeper into breakfast, because morning meals set the tone for the whole day more than most people realize. The right breakfast can make the afternoon easier before the afternoon even arrives. The wrong one can start a chain reaction before you have finished your coffee. Until then, remember this. Your body does not need theatrical food. It needs steady food. It does not need a sugar ambush disguised as convenience. It does not need constant rescue from snacks that only create the next problem. It needs meals built with enough substance, enough fiber, enough protein, enough patience, and enough common sense that your bloodstream is not being asked to manage chaos from morning until night. That is the everyday path. Not glamorous, not trendy, not loud, but strong. And strong is what you want when the subject is your health.